I love phone season, and soon we're going to get our first look at the Google Pixel 10, and I mean really soon. So in about a month's time, on August 20th, that is when Google have sent out all the invites for the Made by Google event. So that is where we are going to first see the Google Pixel 10, the Pixel 10 Pro, the Pixel 10 Pro XL, the Pixel 10 Pro Fold, and maybe a Pixel Watch 4 among some other things that Google might announce. Google haven't confirmed any specs yet about the Pixel 10 or 10 Pro Fold or anything that's coming out at the Made by Google event, but we've kind of gathered enough information at this point from leaks and rumors spread across the internet, and these tend to be mostly accurate. So if you want no spoilers ahead of the Made by Google event, I would weirdly switch off now. Don't watch any more of this video because we're going to go through everything that is out there. So what's old, what's new, and what is the same. But let me start with probably the biggest upgrade and tackle this one first, because all of these new Pixel 10s across the line are going to be getting the new Tensor G5. Now, this is definitely the biggest change coming to the Pixels this year, and that's because Google is switching its manufacturing for the Tensor chip from Samsung to TSMC, which also means it will be built on that 3nm process, which is good news. And I won't talk in huge details here because we just don't know anything concrete about that chip itself. But should you care about the Tensor G5, I think you should, because we've seen some leaked benchmarks for a Tensor G5 coming from a prototype of the Pixel 10 Pro Fold, and it definitely tells us that there's going to be some improvements here. It showed us that there was a 36% improvement in both the single core and multi-core performance over the Tensor G4, and that's a nice upgrade, but it's still not really going to compete with Snapdragon on their 8 Elite chip or even newer chips in flagship phones like the Galaxy S26 that will release later on in the year. So it's definitely not the jump we were hoping for on the Tensor G5, but the good news here is that Google optimizes its software for those Tensor chips really well. So even though the Tensor G4 was definitely weaker than the Snapdragon 8 Elite, on paper for everyday tasks you necessarily wouldn't know about it. So it does mean that the Tensor G5 is definitely going to feel a bit quicker and snappier when we see it with the Pixel 10s. What is new though with the rest of the phones? And let's just touch on design, because for the most part, just to get this out the way, these phones are going to look 99% similar to what they do on the Pixel 9. Like, there really isn't going to be much of a change at all. I know that the SIM card tray has moved on the Pixel 10 Pro, which is maybe the biggest design change that we might see this year, but you're not going to hear me complain about having another year with the same design. Google absolutely smashed it out the park last year with the Pixel 9 and the Pixel 9 Pro's design, and we have seen a lot of renders of what these Pixels will look like, so it kind of confirms the fact that they won't change. And we've even seen a few pictures of the Pixel 10 out in the wild, and most notably, I still can't believe we saw this, but we actually saw photos of Google filming the commercial for the Pixel 10, and granted that the pictures weren't great, but it kind of did confirm everything that we need to know, and mostly that is that the design isn't changing. Let me talk about the Pixel that is getting the bigger updates this year, and if you like folding phones, then the Pixel 10 Pro Fold I don't think is going to disappoint. I've used the 9 Pro Fold a lot this year, and there's one thing that still annoys me. It is the bezel on the cover display, but that should be trimming down this year because Google is giving us a bigger 6.4-inch display, and then at the same time bumping up the peak brightness to 3000 nits, which is always nice. I wish though that Google would just do something about the corners on this phone. Now look at this, you can see that it eats so much into the screen. Like, I kind of forget about it until I notice it, and then when I notice it I kind of can't unnotice it. So I wish Google would do something about that, but it is rumored that Google are going to put in a bigger battery to the Pixel 10 Pro Fold, and if they do that, then I'll let them off about the corners. I thought the battery on the 9 Pro Fold was alright, it wasn't too bad, but it is rumoured that we're going to see a 5015 mAh battery this year in the 10 Pro Fold, and that is the biggest battery in a folding phone that isn't using silicon carbon, and it then makes it much bigger than the 4400 mAh battery in the Galaxy Z Fold 7, so I am on board with this. But the biggest update to the Pixel 10 Pro Fold is going to be its IP rating, because it should be getting an IP68 rating, and there is not any other folding phone on the market that you can get yet that has the IP rating. Now, if we do get that IP68 rating, which is what we see on most normal slab style phones, this will be a huge jump for folding phones, because most folds at the moment are good with water at this point, but dust is still the weakness. So if Google can do this, I will be very happy. I think this will be huge for folding phones because there is no folding phone out there from Honor or from Vivo or from Samsung that fully protects it from dust and water, but that is what we're going to get if the new 10 Pro Fold gets an IP68 rating. And that'll probably be it that changes on the Pixel 10 Fold. It's going to be a very minimal year for updates. Even the cameras on the Pixel 10 Pro Fold are going to be exactly the same as the ones on the 9 Pro Fold, and that is a shame because the ultra-wide camera on the 9 Pro Fold really wasn't great. And talking of not great, neither was the wired charging speed. It's stuck at 23 watts wired charging, which is so slow, but this year we're still going to be getting 23 watts of slow wired charging. But what about the other classic slab style phones, so the Pixel 10 and the Pixel 10 Pro? Well, the Pixel 10 is probably going to be getting the bigger upgrades this year. However, the big upgrades do mean a little bit of a downgrade as well. For the first time on a base model Pixel, there will be 3 cameras because Google is adding a telephoto camera, which to me sounds like great news. It'll be the same 10.8 megapixel 5x lens used on the Pixel 10 Pro Fold, which personally I don't actually think is great, but on a base model Pixel, I think it's a little bit more justifiable. And I think a lot of people are going to upgrade their base model Pixel 9 to the Pixel 10 just so you get that extra telephoto camera, because why would you not want 3 cameras? The problem is though that if you do upgrade, you're going to have to make a bit of a trade-off because the ultra wide and the main camera get weaker to introduce the telephoto camera. So what I mean by this is that it's going to have the same main 48 megapixel camera as the Pixel 9a and a downgraded ultra wide from 48 megapixels last year to just 12 this year, which I think is a bit of an odd move to be honest. But on the plus side, Google's processing with their cameras is fantastic, so you might not really notice that downgrading quality on the main and the ultra wide, and it could be a good trade-off to actually get that telephoto lens. But Google had to downgrade the cameras I think on the Pixel 10 to give you a reason to still go ahead and buy the Pixel 10 Pro and Pro XL, because then you get those bigger, better main and ultra wide cameras. So I don't know, it's something that you might have to have a bit of a trade-off for to get the third lens, which is the telephoto, and I think a lot of people will do that. But besides that, the changes are minimal. On the Pixel 10, you're going to get a slightly brighter display at 3000 nits of peak brightness. The charging is going to get minimally faster to 29 watts, and then there's going to be a slight bump in battery as well. So you're going to go from 4700 milliamp hours on last year's to 4970 milliamp hours on the new Pixel 10. So a good upgrade on the Pixel 10 for the telephoto cameras, but other than that, it's very small in terms of its larger updates. And the same can be said for the Pixel 10 Pro and the 10 Pro XL. The display is going to be the same on both, so still 6.3 inches and 6.8 inches with no real changes to each. And when it comes to the cameras, there isn't really going to be a jump here either. They both still will get that 50 megapixel main and the 48 megapixel ultra wide and telephoto. The only change coming to the Pixel 10s this year is that on the cameras now, you're going to be able to get macro photography on the telephoto lens. On the Pixel 9 Pros, only the ultra wide can do this at the moment, so having an option for both is actually nice, as hopefully the telephoto camera can just let in a little bit more light for better detail. So it's really nice that you're going to be able to get the option to do your macro photography on both the telephoto and macro lens. And there really aren't any other changes coming to the 10 Pro and the 10 Pro XL, except that we're going to get different batteries on both. Now the Pixel 10 Pro XL, I suppose most notably, is going to get the biggest battery in any Pixel. So it's going to jump to 5200 milliamp hours from its 5060 on the Pixel 9 Pro XL. And whilst not a huge jump, I will never complain about getting bigger battery. I feel like that's what I only ever want in an upgrade. The Pixel 10 Pro is also going to get a jump in battery, but it's just not as big of a jump as the Pixel 10 Pro XL. It's going to get a bigger 4870 milliamp hour battery, which is only a small increase. But the reason for this is so it can make way for the new vapor chamber coming to the Pixel 10 Pro. So it's not a bad trade-off overall, but it's just not the battery jump we'd hoped to see. And it's a slight bump in storage for the Pixel 10 Pro XL. So if you're going to be picking this one up, then the 128GB version has gone now. So the minimum you're going to be able to get is 256 gigs, but that is only on the XL version. So the regular Pixel 10 Pro is still going to be coming at a base storage of 128 gig. But there is one maybe upgrade coming to potentially all of the Pixel line this year, which I think is probably the most exciting. And that is the fact that all these Pixels Pixels are going to be getting Qi 2 wireless charging. Now, we've actually seen pretty credible marketing materials that point towards Google finally introducing the magnetic charging to the Pixel 10s. Now, I don't know if this is going to be built directly into the Pixel 10s, similar to how the iPhone does it, or if Google will just be releasing some magnetic accessories, but still, it's actually quite exciting. And we know there's a couple of accessories that are coming to the Pixel 10s this year, and because they are magnetic, what Google is going to be calling them is Pixelsnap. And I really like the name. I think Pixelsnap sounds really good. The accessories we will see is going to be a Pixelsnap charger, a Pixelsnap charging stand, and a Pixelsnap ring stand, which is probably going to be some sort of stand just to keep your phone up when watching movies and stuff like that. I think that the Qi 2 introduction and the Pixelsnap accessories are probably going to be the most exciting update, because like almost zero Android phones have adopted the magnets built into the phone yet, and I really hope that Google do this. And I think that the one thing that the Pixel 10s is missing is magnetic charging, so hopefully, fingers crossed, Google put it into the back of the Pixel 10s. I know it was a long one, but that is pretty much everything that we will see on August 20th at the Made by Google event in New York. And it's not a huge update for the regular Pixels this year, but I think it is a bit of a bigger year for the Pixel 10 Pro Fold. The big deal though is Google actually now using that new Tensor G5 and how it actually performs against Snapdragon chips, but more importantly, the Tensor G4. Let me know your thoughts on the new Pixel 10's refinement year this year. I was going to say upgrades, but there really isn't a huge thing that is changing. So let me know what you think down in the comments below. Before you head off, why not subscribe to the Android Authority channel? And if you do that, then I'll see you in the next video.